Okay. So our topic will be IAS 40, investment property. So or PAS 40 if you're going for the Philippine accounting standards. So our focus will be the discussion of our investment properties and basically all the concepts that are in relation to this particular item. Okay, so for board exam purposes, again, only one item based on the table of specification and the syllabus. So, one item lang ulit. So, let's try to see na lang kung anong lalabas sa board examination. So, we go directly to the summary of our discussion. We go to the definition of an investment property. So, as per the provision of the standard, investment property pertains to property which could be land, building, a portion of a building, or both, okay? So, ibig sabihin, pwedeng land and building. Pwedeng land lang, pwedeng building lang, or pwedeng a portion lang, okay? Which is held by the owner or by a lessee under a finance lease to earn rentals or for capital appreciation or for both purposes. Okay? So, yun yung mga considerations natin. So to emphasize ano ang kailangan nating intindihin dito. Unang-una, para maging investment property, dapat yan ay either land or building lang. Okay? Or a portion of your land or a portion of your building. Okay? Pwede ring magkasama. Okay? So ibig sabihin, hindi pwede ang equipment, hindi pwede ang machinery, hindi pwede ang furniture and other assets. Okay? Tapos, pangalawa, dapat ang purpose kung bakit mo in-acquire or kung bakit meron sa'yo yan, okay, ay for either for capital appreciation, ibig sabihin para tumaas yung value ng asset, or number 2 for rental purposes, ibig sabihin pinapa-upa mo. Okay? And pangatlo, dapat ikaw ay either owner, ibig sabihin ikaw ang may-ari niyan, or pangalawa, ikaw ay lessee, okay, under a finance lease. So effectively, you are also the owner. Okay? Kasi you are a lessee under a finance lease. Di ba? Kapag finance lease yan, we are basically as the lessee, we are the one receiving all of the benefits of the particular asset. So yun yan. We proceed next. Doon naman tayo sa mga examples ng ating investment property. So examples of investment property are ito. Land held for long-term capital appreciation. So basically, binili mo yung lupa para lang tumaas yung value. Yan. So yan yung mga reason kung bakit later on yung lupa mo, akala mo mababa lang yung value, tapos biglang ang nangyari is in-acquire pala yan in-acquire ng government or ng private institution kasi pagpapatayo ng subdivision, etc. So, syempre, tataas yung value. Then, yung investment property mo, mag-gain ka from that particular capital appreciation. Next, land held for a currently undetermined future use. So, may lupa ka, tapos tinatanong ka, oy, bakit ka may lupa? Ano gagawin mo dyan? Tapos, ang sagot, hindi ko nga alam eh. Ayan, di ba? So, basically, undetermined future use, pero basically, lupa yan, at generally speaking, ang value ng lupa ay tumataas as time passes. So, hindi yan nagde-depreciate, nag-appreciate yan. So, ibig sabihin, pwede pa rin niyang maging part ng investment property. Next, building leased out under an operating lease. So, meron kang building, tapos pinapaupa mo sa iba't ibang mga tenant under operating lease lang. Okay? Next, vacant building held to be leased out under an operating lease. So, vacant siya ngayon, okay? Pero balak mo siyang ipaupa. Okay? So, ibig sabihin investment property pa rin. Or property that is being constructed or developed for future use as investment property. So, ibig sabihin it is under construction pa lang. So, kahit under construction pa lang yan, kapag kunyari gumagastos ka, ang debit mo talaga dyan, investment property na. So, ibig sabihin, ina-accumulate mo lahat ng nagastos mo for that particular construction under the account title investment property. Okay. Next tayo. The following items naman, okay, are not investment property and therefore are outside the scope of IAS 40. Una, property held for use in the production or supply of goods or services or for administrative purposes. Bakit hindi ito kasama sa investment property? Kasi siya ay PPE or property, plant, and equipment. Second, property held for sale in the ordinary course of business or in the process of construction of development for such sale. So hindi rin yan kasama kasi yan ay under IAS 2 inventories. Next, property being constructed or developed on behalf of third parties. This is under construction contract. So hindi siya pwedeng isama. Okay? So kasi construction contract, hindi yan sa'yo. So parang ang labas dyan, as if inventory na ibebenta pero hindi talaga. Kasi nga, ang specific standard talaga na magko-cover yan is IAS 11. And by the way, IAS 11 is going to be, actually it's already superseded, magiging covered na siya ng PFRS 15 later on. Okay, so mawawala na tong standard na to. Pero basically, parehas pa rin naman yung parehas pa rin naman yung concept niyan. So generally, it's still a construction, okay? Or construction of a particular item or a particular building or structure for a third party. Okay? Next, owner-occupied property. Okay? So, hindi rin pwede kasi nga siya, property, plant, and equipment. Kasama yung property held for future use as owner-occupied property, property held for future development and subsequent use as owner-occupied property, or property occupied by employees and owner-occupied property awaiting disposal. So, hindi yan kasama as part of our investment property. Okay? Kasi, yung naunang binigay, okay, yung mga property for future use as owner-occupied, PPE pa rin yan. Yung dinedevelop mo as owner-occupied, PPE pa rin yan. Tapos yung occupied awaiting disposal, this is going to be non-current asset held for sale naman. So hindi rin siya pwedeng maging investment property. Tapos property leased out to another entity under a finance lease, hindi rin siya pwedeng maging part ng investment property kasi kung ikaw yung lessor, 'di ba, i-recognize mo yung asset na to. Kasi ang magiging kapalit niyan, receivable mo siya. So parang ang labas, tatanggap ka ng rentals, okay, kapalit yung asset mo. So ibig sabihin, hindi siya pwede maging investment property kasi madede-recognize na yung leased asset under finance lease. Okay? So, i-take note lang natin itong nakalagay dito. In May 2008, as part of its annual improvement project, the IASB expanded the scope of IAS 40 to include property under construction or development for use as an investment property. So such property previously fell with the scope of IAS 16. So explain lang natin, baka kasi later on may ma-encounter kang old na problems. Kapag before kasi 2008 or before 2008, before May 2008, kapag under construction pa lang yung investment property, hindi daw muna siya investment property. Daw muna siya, PPE siya under IAS 16. Tapos kapag natapos mo nang i-construct, saka mo na lang daw i-reclassify. Ang labas kasi doon, ang mangyayari, niloloko mo lang sarili mo, bakit mo pa i-classify as PPE under IAS 16 kung eventually ililipat mo din naman ng IAS 40 investment property. So gawin na lang, para diretso, di-recognize mo na agad immediately ito as part of your investment property, kahit under construction pa lang. Kaya nga siya naisama dito sa scope, dito sa taas. Okay? Yung ito, being constructed or developed. Okay. Next tayo. Other classification issues naman tayo. We go to the first item, yung property held under an operating lease. Okay. So ganito kasi yan, no? Paano daw kung tayo ay lessee, okay? At tayo ay may inuupahan na property and the property is being leased under an operating lease. So ano daw ang gagawin? Sinabi, a property interest that is held by a lessee under an operating lease may be classified and accounted for as investment property provided that both, okay, these requirements are met. Okay? Ano yung first requirement? Both. All. Okay, tatlo kasi yan eh. All of these requirements are met. Una, the rest of the definition of investment property is met. Ibig sabihin, dapat number 1 yan ay syempre, dito kasi lessee ka na, di ba? So, tanggalin na natin yung requirement na owned or leased kasi meron na agad yon. So, ang next na requirement mo na lang, ano ba yan? Land ba yan? Building ba yan? Or partial part ng land, part ng building. So, basta pasok doon. Okay. Pangalawang requirement, ano ba ang purpose? For rental purposes ba? Papasublease mo ba yan? Or for capital appreciation? O, ganun yung mangyari dyan. So, dapat ma-meet yun. Second, the operating lease is accounted for as if it were a finance lease in accordance with IAS 17 leases, which is now hindi na IAS 12 to, ay hindi na IAS 17 to kasi na supersede na yung leases natin. Okay, so yung IFRS na ang susundan natin. Pero generally speaking, dapat daw yung operating lease accounted for as if it is a finance lease. Okay? Tapos pangatlo, the lessee uses the fair value model set out in this standard for the asset recognized. So ibig sabihin, dapat daw fair value model ang susundan mo. Pag hindi mo ma-satisfy itong tatlong requirement na to, then hindi mo pwedeng i-recognize yung ating inuupahan under an operating lease as part of our investment property. Ayun lang naman yan. Next, an entity may make the foregoing classification on a property by property basis. Ano daw yun? Itong classification na to can be done on a property by property basis. So, ibig sabihin, kung madami kang inuupahan, pwedeng yung isa finance lease, yung isa operating lease, etc. etc. So, lahat ng mga properties mo na magka-qualify dito sa provision na to, then pwede mo siyang i-consider as part of your investment property. Lahat ng hindi pasok, edi normal lang siya na operating lease. Ang nire-recognize mo lang, expense ka lang ng rental. So, ganun lang yan. Next concern, yung partial own use, okay? Or partial part na PPE, part na investment property. Okay? So if the owner uses part of the property for its own use and part to earn rentals or for capital appreciation, and the portion can be sold or leased out separately, then they are going to be accounted for separately. Therefore, the portion that is rented out will be recognized as investment property, and the portion that is used, okay, or that is owned or being used by the entity or by the owner will be recognized as as PPE. Okay? Pero meron kasing limitation yan, ito nakalagay dito. If the portions cannot be sold or leased out separately, the property will remain to be an investment property only if the owner-occupied portion is insignificant. Okay. So, ano ibig sabihin nun? To sum up, ganito lang yan. Kung pwedeng hatiin, kunyari, 10 floors yung building mo, tapos yung 4 floors, yun ang ginagamit ng company, owner-occupied, pagkatapos yung naiiwan na floors, yun yung pinaparenta, edi yung 4 floors, PPE. Yung 6 floors, investment property. Ganun lang yan. Paano naman daw kung yung dun sa buong building pinapaupahan mo, tas may isang room ka lang na ginagamit for administrative purposes, parang ganun. So ang labas niyan, yung entire property is going to be PPE. Yung entire property is going to be investment property. Kasi insignificant yung portion ng property na ginagamit for administrative purposes or as PPE. So ganun siya. So yun minsan ang ginagawa diyan, kunin mo yung percentage based on the area ng property or gamitin mo yung number of floors or kung ano man yung measurement basis na pwede natin gamitin. Basta ang concept doon, kung pwedeng hatiin mo. Kung hindi mo mahati, i-check mo muna kung pwede mo ba siyang i-recognize as investment property in total pag na-satisfy to. Pag hindi naman, edi PPE talaga siya. Wala kang magagawa. So yun yung concept niyan. So, in order for you to consider that particular item, kailangan din nating i-analyze yung concept ng ancillary services. Ano ulit ang ancillary services? Ang concept ng ancillary services, ito yung mga support, maintenance, and other kind of services that we are offering to our tenants or dun sa mga nag-renta sa atin. Okay? Yung level or yung degree ng ancillary services that we are offering to our tenants in proportion to the amount of rentals that they are paying will give us an idea kung yan bang ancillary services na yan ay significant or hindi. Kasi kapag yung ancillary services ay significant in proportion to the rentals being paid, then hindi pala investment property yung asset mo. Property, plant, and equipment pala yan. Pero kapag yung ancillary services ay insignificant or basically a small portion lang as compared doon sa rental or doon sa binabayad sa'yo na renta, then it is still investment property. So yun yun. So to discuss, sabi dito, if an entity provides ancillary services to the occupants of a property held by an entity, the appropriateness of classification as investment property is determined by the significance of the services provided. So parang naulit lang na if those services are relatively insignificant or minimal, okay, a minimal component of the arrangement as a whole, okay, so example daw, for instance, the building owner supplies security and maintenance services to the lessee. So parang ilan lang ba ang security na kailangan mo? Kunyari may building ka, meron ka lang isa or dalawang security. Tapos may maintenance ka, siguro isa or dalawang janitor lang, ganyan, tagalinis lang basically, pero hindi naman nila lilinisan yung lahat ng lahat ng mga offices or office spaces or yung mga pinaparenta, then pwede siyang ma-consider as investment property pa rin kasi minimal lang naman yon. Pero where the services provided are more significant, such as in the case of owner-managed hotel, the property should be classified as owner-occupied or property, plant, and equipment. So ibig sabihin, parang example ganito, ang renta 10,000. Okay? Saan napupunta yung 10,000? Kung majority of the 10,000 that you are paying for is actually going to the ancillary services, then parang ang labas pala, property, plant, and equipment yung nirerentahan. Okay? Or pinaparentahan mo. Pero kung kunyari, 10,000 yung ating rental, pagkatapos yung napupunta sa ancillary services, wala pang 10%, ganyan. Actually, matter of judgment yan. Pero sa tingin mo, hindi naman talaga ganun ka-significant, like minimal lang naman, edi, investment property pa rin yan. Okay? So, yan yung next issue natin. Punta tayo dun sa next issue, yung intra-company rentals. Paano kapag tayo pag sinabing intra-company, within the group, okay? So, within the group, ibig sabihin, either subsidiaries, ganyan, okay? Yung mga business partners, joint ventures, ganyan, yung may nagkakaroon ng consolidation ng reports, okay? So, in case of intra-company rentals, ito lang tatandaan, kung ang pinag-uusapan ay separate FS, okay? Kahit ang nagrerenta pa ng property mo ay related party or hindi, investment property yan. Pero kapag consolidated na yung FS natin, then yung investment property ay magiging property, plant, and equipment kung ang umuupa doon sa property na yon ay subsidiary or parent or related party pala. Okay? So, as provided by the standard, property rented out to a parent, subsidiary, or fellow subsidiary is not investment property in the consolidated financial statements that include both the lessor and the lessee. Okay? Because the property is owner-occupied from the perspective of the group. However, such property qualifies as investment property in the separate financial statements of the lessor. Okay? Lessor. Okay? If the definition of investment property is otherwise met kapag separate FS. Okay. So, yan tayo. So, with that, we can now go to our recognition principle. Okay? So, recognition. Investment property should be recognized as an asset when it is probable that future economic benefits that are associated with the property will flow to the entity and the cost of the property can be reliably measured. Okay? So to sum up, ano yung mga recognition criteria natin? Number 1, dapat ma-meet yung definition ng investment property. Pangalawa, dapat merong probable future economic benefits na makukuha yung entity. Tapos pangatlo, kailangan makukuha natin yung reliable measurement ng cost niya. So, yun lang. With that, kapag na-meet na yung recognition, pwede na tayong pumunta dun sa initial measurement. So, paano daw i-measure ang ating investment property? It will be measured initially at cost. Okay? Kasama ang transaction costs. So, generally, lahat ng mga nagastos mo in order for us to be able to complete or to consummate all of the contracts related or to be able to fully use or to get to take control over that particular investment property. Okay? So, pero meron daw cost na hindi kailangan or hindi pwedeng i-capitalize. Meron yung sinasabing startup cost, abnormal waste, or other initial operating losses. Hindi yan kasama sa capitalizable cost natin. These are expensed outright. So, yan. So, tapos, kapag tapos ka ng mag-initial measurement, so basically, tapos na natin tapos na tayong mag-debit ng investment property, ang next natin gagawin, paano kapag year-end? Every year-end, anong gagawin natin? Kailangan nating i-measure ulit yan. So, subsequent measurement tayo. Anong sinabi ng standard? Dalawa lang ang option mo. Kapag ikaw ay mag-measure subsequently ng investment property, you either measure it using the fair value model or the cost model. Okay? So, either fair value model or the cost model. From the term itself, fair value model, kaparehas siya nung ating investments under IFRS 9. You simply get the fair value, compare it with the most recent or yung naka-record na carrying amount, tas yung difference, gain or loss. Kapag cost model naman, this is when you are going to use the concept of depreciation, which you already learned in basic accounting. Basically, you are simply going to compute for the depreciation of the investment property using a depreciation model that is, or depreciation method that is applied. Tapos yun na. So basically, cost minus accumulated depreciation and accumulated impairment loss. However, you need to consider, okay, that one method must be adapted for all of an entity's investment property. Change is permitted only if this results in a more appropriate presentation. And IAS 40 notes that this is highly unlikely, okay, for a change from a fair value that it is highly unlikely for a change from a fair value model to cost model. Okay? So ano lang gusto nating sabihin diyan? Kapag nag-cost model ka, edi lahat cost model. Okay? Kapag nag-fair value model ka, lahat dapat fair value model. Okay? Ito kasi yung general concept niyan. Bakit sinabi din dito na it is highly unlikely na mag-change ka from fair value model to cost model? Because generally, di ba investment property nga yan? So kung investment property yan, malamang may fair value yan. Okay? Alam mo yung increase in fair value at alam mo kung anong halaga niyan. Okay? So ngayon, kung magkakaroon ng change in model from fair value to cost model, baka ang intention mo talaga hindi yung pag-change ng model but pagre-reclassify nung item from investment property papuntang PPE. Parang ganun yung labas niya. Although, kung kaya mong i-justify naman kung bakit ka mag-change ng model, okay lang. Tapos, di ba, always remember, in such cases na gumagamit ka ng fair value model, tapos talagang nagkataon lang na walang fair value na available, okay? So, in that case, ang gagawin mo, you are going to use cost model, pero you are going to ignore any scrap value or any residual value. Okay? So, ilagay na lang natin siya dito para ma-note natin. Okay? So, dito na lang siya. Okay? Bakit yun? Wait lang. In cases where fair value model is used, but fair value is not available, cost model will be used, but scrap value will be ignored. Okay, so tandaan mo lang tong concept na to. Okay? So 'di ba kasi hindi naman pwedeng paiba-iba ka ng model. So kunyari fair value ka tapos biglang nagkataon lang nga na walang fair value available during that time, then in order for you to determine the fair value measurement during a particular year end, mag-cost model ka pero tanggalin mo yung scrap value sa recognition. So parang or sa pagko-compute. So basically parang kung gumagamit ka ng straight line method, wag kang magbawas ng residual value or scrap value. Okay? So yun siya. Tapos kapag cost model ka, wala namang problema eh. Kung cost model ka, tuloy-tuloy mo lang cost model lahat. Ayun siya. Yan. So basically yun yung consideration natin. Tapos we go to the fair value model. So as described, ano daw ang fair value model? Yun. Investment properties measured at fair value, which is going to be measured by getting the price that will be received, okay, in an arm's length transaction, tapos i-compare mo siya doon sa ating doon sa ating carrying amount. The difference will be gain or loss. And the gain or loss arising from the change in fair value will be recognized in net profit. Okay? Or in profit or loss during the period that it arises. So, ganun lang kasimple. Diba? Parang walang challenge. Basta kunin mo lang yung difference ng fair value at saka carrying amount. Yung difference, whether gain or loss, papasok siya dun sa profit or loss natin or sa income statement. Okay? As provided, fair value should reflect the actual market state and circumstances as of the balance sheet date. So, ibig sabihin, you need to follow the general concept of fair value which is provided by IFRS 13, fair value measurement. Okay? Para malaman mo yung best evidence ng fair value, di hanapin mo to. Okay? The best evidence of fair value is of course the current prices in the active market. Okay? So, yun siya. So, kung land yan, generally may zonal value, may appraised value, so you can look for those items in your area, tapos yun yung magiging gamit mo. Okay? May mga actuaries, okay, or meron yung mga nagva-value ng lupa, meron din ganun. So, pwedeng yun ang maging basis mo. Ngayon, kapag wala daw yung current market prices, okay, ano daw ang pwede mong gamitin? Pwede mong gamitin yung market prices for similar properties, okay, pero isa-subject mo siya sa adjustments. Okay? So actually ito rin yung sinasabi sa IFRS 13. Okay? So yun siya. Tapos pwede ka rin gumamit ng discounted cash flows kung gusto mo. Okay? As your estimates. So basically yan yung mga pwede mong gamitin to get the fair value. Okay? So to sum up, anong gagamitin mo para makuha mo yung fair value? Number 1, hanapin mo yung market prices sa active market. Pangalawa, kunin mo yung active market sa similar properties, tapos i-subject mo siya sa adjustment, okay, based on the differences of the properties. Okay, so parang example, may lupa ka sa La Union, tapos yung lupa mo sa La Union generally wala siyang fair value. So ang gagawin mo, hanapin mo yung pinakamalapit na lugar na may fair value, tapos i-adjust mo na lang dun sa property mo. I-adjust mo yung value kung mas maganda ba yung property mo, mas pangit, ganyan. So, or mas substandard, ganyan. So, ganun ang adjustment mo. Pero pag wala, pangatlo, ang gagawin mo is discounted cash flow of projected amount na madederive mo from selling that particular asset. So, yun siya. Okay? So, there is a rebuttable presumption that the entity will be able to determine the fair value of an investment property, okay, reliably on a continuing basis. However, ito yung sinasabi natin, if an entity determines that fair value of an investment property under construction is not reliably determinable but expects the fair value of the property to be reliably determinable when construction is complete, it measures the investment property under construction at cost, okay, until either its fair value becomes reliably determinable or construction is completed. So, di ba, parang labas niyan, ganito. Di ba, hindi pa nga tapos yung property. Kunyari, nag-start ka ng construction, January. Okay, so January tayo nag-start ng construction. December 31 na, hindi pa tapos yung construction. So, ano gagawin mo? Di ba, naka-fair value model ka nga. Kunyari, fair value model nga yung ginagamit natin. Syempre, hindi pa nga tapos yung property. So, hindi mo pa alam kung anong magiging fair value nung kino-construct natin na structure. So, ang sabi, di ang gawin mo, i-record mo lang siya at cost. Ibig sabihin, lahat ng nagastos mo lang, ipasok mo lang doon. Yun na yung initial amount ng ating investment property. Okay? Tapos, saka ka na lang magpalit saka ka mag-adjust for fair value kung number 1, available na yung fair value, or number 2, tapos na yung construction, at pwede mo nang malaman yung total na ma-arrive mong benefit from that particular asset. So, yun siya. Tapos, ito naman, if an entity determines that the fair value of an investment property other than an investment property under construction is not reliably determinable on a continuing basis, the entity shall measure the investment property using the cost model in IAS 16. The residual value of the investment property shall be assumed to be 0 and the entity shall apply IAS 16 until disposal of the investment property. Yan actually yung nilagay nating note dito sa taas. Okay? Yan. So, spoiler pala ako kanina. Okay? So, anyway, yan yung ibig nating sabihin dyan. So, ano ibig sabihin natin doon therefore? So, kunyari, naka-fair value model ka, except for this particular asset na hindi natin ma-determine talaga yung fair value ng diretso or ng continuous. Ibig sabihin, every year may available na fair value. Hindi daw ganun yung situation. So in that case, pwede kang or pwede kang gumamit ng exception dun sa standard at gawin mo tong approach na to for that specific asset only. Okay? Kasi yun yung hindi mo talaga magamitan ng fair value model on a continuing basis. Okay? Tapos, where a property has previously been measured at fair value, it should continue to be measured at fair value until disposal, even if comparable market transaction becomes less frequent or market prices become less readily available. Okay? So, yun siya. So, ano ngayon ibig sabihin yan? Ibig sabihin, kung nasimulan mo na gumamit ng fair value, dapat ituloy-tuloy mo na yung paggamit ng fair value kahit daw hindi consistent yung pagpo-provide. So parang example, available yung fair value ngayon, next year wala, pero sa susunod na taon meron, edi okay lang. So kumbaga, hindi lang magiging annual ang pag-change mo ng fair value. Okay, not to be confused with this one kasi ito, yung case na to, ito yung kakastart mo pa lang, nagde-decide ka kung fair value model or cost model ang gagawin mo. Okay, so kung ang labas dyan, sa simula pa lang, nakapag-decide ay na-determine mo na hindi talaga madali or magiging mahirap lang sa'yo na gumamit ng fair value model for this particular asset kasi hindi talaga magiging determinable on a continuing basis yung ating fair value, then saka ka magde-decide na i-treat or gumamit ng cost model for this particular asset. Okay, so yun na. Dapat clear tayo dyan. Okay, so with that, we now go to cost model. So, ano naman ang cost model? Siyempre, yan naman yung madali. Yan yung inaral mo din sa basic accounting. Cost minus accumulated depreciation and accumulated impairment loss. So, basically, parang yan din lang yung gumagamit ka ng depreciation models natin. Siyempre, ang pinakasikat na depreciation model, straight line. Okay, yan yung inaral mo rin sa basic accounting. Pero, hindi naman bawal na gumamit ka ng ibang model for as long as yung model na nagamit mo is the depreciation model that will reflect the benefit or the pattern of the benefits that you will derive from that particular investment property. Okay? So, yan. So, from there, dito na tayo. Ito na yung medyo masayang portion kasi ito na yung magta-transfer ka or magre-reclassify ka naman. Okay? So, ito yung galing ng investment property papunta sa ibang classification or galing siya sa ibang classification papuntang investment property. Yan. So, transfers to or from investment property should only be made when there is a change in use evidenced by one or more of the following. Okay? So, ano yung mga possible? Una, commencement of owner occupation. Ibig sabihin, dating investment property, ngayon magiging PPE. Okay? So, kunyari dati pinaparenta mo tapos biglang napag-decidean mo, ay hindi na ako paparenta. Ako na lang gagamit niyan. Gagawin kong factory, gagawin kong sarili kong opisina, etc. Okay, pangalawa, commencement of development with a view to sale. Okay? Meaning transfer from investment property to inventories naman yan. Ibig sabihin, ibebenta na natin yung ating investment property. Next, end of owner occupation. So, ibig sabihin, galing PPE papuntang investment property. Commencement of an operating lease to another party. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, kunyari, baka galing yung inventory papuntang investment property. Or end of construction or development, transfer from property in the course of construction or development papuntang investment property. This is in the case pag kunyari, baka nung kino-construct mo siya, balak mo talaga siyang PPE. So basically, or balak mo pa lang siyang gawing inventory. So yun yung initial classification niya. Tapos bigla ang nangyari, nung tapos na yung construction or development, now decide ka, ay ipaparenta ko na lang, ganyan. So magiging investment property siya. So in that case, when an entity decides to sell an investment property without development, the property is not reclassified as inventory but is dealt with as investment property under or until it is derecognized. Okay? So yun daw. So ibebenta mo without development. So ang gawin mo daw, since basically may measure mo din lang naman yan at fair value, kung naka fair value model ka. So ituloy mo lang daw yung paggamit mo or pag-recognize sa kanya ng investment property hanggang mabenta. So generally, para minsanan na lang yung pag-recognize ng gain or loss. Okay? So ito yung mga rules na susundan mo. So kung medyo nahihirapan ka doon sa reclassification ng or ng financial assets natin, okay, yung mga FVOC to FVPL, ganyan, or amortized cost, etc., ganyan. So ito medyo madali lang naman. So ito parang basically titignan mo lang kung saan siya nanggaling. Okay? So una, for a transfer from investment property carried at fair value to owner-occupied property or inventories. So ibig sabihin palabas ng investment property at naka fair value model ka, the fair value at the change of use or date of change basically is the cost of the property under its new classification. So anong labas doon? So parang ang kwento niyan, may investment property ka, sige tuloy lang, measure mo lang siya at fair value, tuloy mo lang. Tapos pagdating ng date na mag-change ka na ng classification, okay? Tapos ingat dito kasi baka isipin mo nasanay ka kasi sa IFRS 9 na ang reclassification date is yung first day of the subsequent accounting period. Hindi ganun yun ha. Dito kung kailan ka magpapalit, diretsong yun na agad yung reclassification date mo. So during that time, kunin mo yung fair value, yun na rin yung cost nung ating magiging reclassified item. Kung yan man ay inventory or PPE. Second, kapag naman galing ka sa owner-occupied, papunta ka ng investment property, tas carried at fair value yan. So, ang gagawin mo, IAS 16 should be applied up to the date of reclassification. So, basically, ganun din. Tuloy-tuloy mo kung ano yung method na ginamit mo under PPE. Tapos, any difference between the carrying amount and the fair value at the date of the change will now be dealt with as a revaluation under IAS 16. So parang ang labas ganito. Bago mo ilipat yung PPE papuntang investment property, i-revalue mo muna siya. Kasi naka fair value model, di ba? Papuntang fair value. Okay? Tapos, kung ano na yung na-update na price, yun yung i-recognize mo or i-carry mo naman na cost nung ating investment property. Okay? Next, for transfer from inventories naman, papuntang investment property at fair value, any difference between the fair value at the date of transfer and its previous carrying amount should be recognized in profit or loss. So, ibig sabihin, kunin mo lang, naka-fair value pa rin yung investment property, i-debit mo siya at fair value, i-credit mo yung inventory at carrying amount, the difference will be profit or loss. So, yun. Tapos, when an entity completes construction or development of investment property, that will be carried at fair value, any difference between the fair value at the date of transfer and the previous carrying amount should be recognized in profit or loss. So, ganun din lang. Yan yung sinabi natin sa taas na nung initial PPE dapat siya or inventory tapos biglang balak mo na siyang maging investment property. Basta kung ano man yung difference nung i-debit mo sa investment property at saka yung naka-capitalize na cost will be part ng profit or loss, either gain or loss siya. Yun. So itong mga to, pansin mo lahat to puro fair value. So kapag fair value, ang basic rule natin, i-measure mo at fair value hanggang reclassification, yun yung magiging capitalizable cost nung bagong classification niya. Kapag cost, o pinakasimple, ayan o, when the entity uses the cost model for investment property, transfers between categories do not change the carrying amount of the property transferred and they do not change the cost of the property for measurement or disclosure purposes. Ibig sabihin, kung ano yung carrying amount, yun na yung ilipat. So, kunyari, investment property papuntang PPE. E di ang gawin mo, debit mo yung PPE, credit mo yung investment property kung magkano yung carrying amount. So, wala nang papaguhin. Kung ikaw naman ay investment property na ka-cost model, tapos ililipat mo ng inventory, edi debit ka ng inventory, credit ka ng investment property, same amount. Walang gain or loss na i-recognize. Yun yung masaya. Pero malamang hindi yan lalabas sa board exam kasi andali, di ba? So, sayang yung item kung yun lang yung tanong. Okay? Pero malay mo, lumabas, edi at least, di ba? So, yan. And then, finally, disposal and disclosures na lang tayo. So, disposal naman tayo. Ano to? Ba't may ganun doon? Wait lang ah. Oops. Okay. So an investment property should be recognized on disposal or should be derecognized. Sorry, nagkamali. An investment property should be derecognized on disposal or when the investment property is permanently withdrawn from use and no future economic benefits are expected from its disposal. The gain or loss on disposal should be calculated as the difference between the net disposal proceeds and the carrying amount of the asset and should be recognized as income or expense in the income statement. So, madali lang yun. So, basically, ang gagawin mo, magkano yung proceeds versus yung carrying amount, yung difference niya, gain or loss. Compensation from third parties is recognized when it becomes receivable. Yan. So, kasi baka possible na may additional kang matatanggap pa from third parties in relation to the derecognition, then recognize mo lang siya as receivable muna, tapos kapag natanggap na, edi gawin mong cash. Basta generally, kasama siya sa proceeds mo. So, yun lang. And then, finally, disclosures. So, we go to disclosures that are relevant both for fair value model and cost model. So, again, we hope na walang lalabas na ganitong question. Okay? Pero kung may lumabas man, basahin na lang natin. At least, basta ang rule natin dyan, kung ano yung parang pag binigyan ka ng multiple choice, kung ano sa tingin mo yung pinaka hindi kailangan, edi yun na lang yung gamitin mong yun na lang ang ilagay mo as your answer. Okay? So, yun. First, kailangan nating i-disclose kung ang ginagamit ba natin ay fair value or cost model. Tapos, 'di ba, sinabi natin kanina, dapat isa lang dito. Kung fair value lang, kung cost model lang, unless meron talagang specific na item na nagagamitan mo ng exception. Okay, or ng exception dun sa paggamit mo ng nag-iisang model kapag hindi available yung fair value. Okay, and that is specifically for fair value model. Next, kapag fair value model ang gamit mo, whether the property interest held under operating lease are classified and accounted for as investment property. So yan yung mga hawak mo na leased items, kung pasok ba siya sa investment property. Kung classification is difficult daw, the criteria to distinguish investment property from owner-occupied property and from property held for sale. Okay. So, basically, ano ibig sabihin nun? Ano daw yung ginamit mo na criteria para mag-decide ka na ito nga ay investment property at ito ay ito ay PPE. So, dapat may listahan ka daw. Next, the extent to which the fair value of an investment property is based on a valuation by a qualified independent valuer. And if there has been no such valuation, the fact must be disclosed. So, ibig sabihin, i-explain mo or i-disclose mo paano mo nakuha yung fair value. Okay? At kung hindi naman ganun, walang valuation, ano daw yung dahilan? The fact must be disclosed, sinabi. And the amounts recognized in profit or loss for rental income, direct operating expenses, okay, for in relation to ancillary services. Di ba? Kasi kailangan nga nating alamin kung yung ancillary services ay minimal or hindi. Direct operating expenses din that did not generate rental income during the period. Kasi yung una, that generated rental income. So ito yung ancillary services. Ito, yung mga hindi daw nag-generate ng rental income. So ibig sabihin, ito yung mga held for capital appreciation and others. Basta hindi siya pasok sa rental. And finally, cumulative change in fair value, recognized in profit or loss on a sale from a pool of assets in which cost model is used into a pool in which the fair value model is used. So, tawag dito, i-separate mo yung ginagamitan mo ng fair value model at saka ng cost model. Tapos, i-disclose mo pa yung restrictions on the realizability of investment property or the remittance of income and proceeds of disposal. Tapos, contractual obligations to purchase, construct, or develop investment property or for repairs, maintenance, or enhancement. So, yan yung mga general na disclosures. Additional disclosures that are related only for fair value ito, yung reconciliation between the carrying amount and the the carrying amount between the end and beginning of the investment property balances. Okay? Significant adjustments kapag nagkaroon ng outside valuation. Tapos, if the entity otherwise use the fair value model measurements on an item of investment property using the cost model, certain additional disclosures are required. So parang ang labas dyan, dapat daw sana fair value model yung gamit mo doon, pero bakit daw nag-cost model ka, i-explain mo din daw yun. Okay? Explain mo pa. Kasi parang ang labas doon, di ba yung sinabi natin kanina sa taas, bakit lahat naka fair value model, tas ito binigyan mo ng exception na naging cost model yung gamit mo sa kanya. Okay? So i-explain mo yun. Okay? Kasi naka fair value model ka. Kapag cost model ka naman, ito yung mga requirements mo. Depreciation, useful life, and depreciation rate, gross carrying amount, and the accumulated depreciation. So basically, parang magbibigay ka ng schedule depreciation schedule. Okay? Tapos, reconciliation of the carrying amount of investment property at the beginning and the end. Okay? Assuming na ipepresent mo yung mga nadagdag, na-dispose. Okay? So, parang schedule talaga yan ng lahat-lahat para mag-balance daw. Okay? Tapos, the fair value of investment property. So, di ba naka-cost model ka? Tapos, kailangan mo din daw i-disclose to. Kasi kailangan mong i-prove kung may available na fair value, bakit ka pa nag-cost model? Okay? So, kailangan mong i-disclose yun. And if the fair value of an item of an investment property cannot be measured reliably, additional disclosures are required, including, if possible, the range of estimates within which fair value is highly likely to lie. So basically, parang nag-cost model ka na nga, ipapadisclose pa sa'yo to. Diba? Kaya ka nga nag-cost model kasi hirap kang maglagay nito, diba? So ilagay mo sa disclosure mo, naka-cost model ka, walang available na fair value, ganyan. Pero kasi, weird lang talaga. Bakit ka mag-recognize ng investment property kung wala kang available na fair value? 'Di ba? Parang medyo weird, 'di ba? Ang isang reason kung bakit ka may investment property kasi for capital appreciation, 'di ba? Tapos kaya nga nagrerenta yung mga tenant mo diyan kasi alam nila maganda yung market or maganda yung kung saan yung location. So kung maganda yung location, dapat may fair value, 'di ba? Kaya weird talaga minsan na bakit ka magko-cost model sa investment property mo na walang fair value. So yun siya. So basically yan, lahat-lahat yan. We are now going to proceed with the theory portion. So we are now going to proceed with the theory questions, okay, in relation to our investment property. So we start with question number 1. Question number 1, which of the following assets may be classified as investment property? So we already discussed that the only items that can be part of investment property will be land or building, di ba? So A, B, C, hindi. D, pwede. So A and D. So letter E ang sagot natin for question number 1. Question number 2, if ancillary services provided to occupants of a property held are blank, the property is classified as blank. So kapag significant, dapat PPE. Kapag insignificant, dapat investment property. So, saan dyan yung tama? Yung letter D. Kapag insignificant, investment property. Number 3, investment properties are measured as follows. Initial measurement at cost. Subsequent measurement, cost model or fair value model. So, letter D ulit ang sagot natin dyan. Question number 4, when an entity uses the fair value model, changes in the fair values of investment properties are recognized in P&L. Wala namang complication din. Dalawa lang naman ang pupuntahan yan. It's either P&L or OCI. Wala naman sa OCI items natin yung changes in fair value ng investment property. So P&L na yan. Yan din yung na-discuss kanina. So letter A. Number 5, the best evidence of fair value for an investment property is yung galing sa active market as provided by IFRS 13. So, ang sagot ay letter C. Okay, so yan. Next, we go to number 6. Fair value is the amount for which an asset could be exchanged by knowledgeable independent parties, or ito yung tinatawag na arm's length transaction. So, letter C ang sagot natin dyan. 7, ano ulit ang pwede sa investment property? Pwedeng lupa, pwedeng building, portion ng building, or pwede ring both land and building. So ang sagot ay letter E, all of this. Lahat yan pwede. Okay? 8, investment property can be held by the owner. Okay? Pwede ring lessee under a finance lease. Kapag lessor ka under a finance lease, hindi na yan pwedeng investment property. Diba? Sinabi na natin kanina. Kasi ang mangyari dyan ay magiging receivable na lang or lease receivable kasi i-recognize mo na yung asset na pinapa-lease out mo kung ikaw yung lessor. So, ang sagot sa number 8 ay letter B. Number 9, owner-occupied property, okay, cannot be treated as investment property. Ang sagot kasi ang owner-occupied ay PPE. So, kung PPE yan, bakit siya magiging investment property? Siyempre, hindi pwede, di ba? So, letter B ang sagot. Number 10, a property that is held by a lessee under an operating lease may be held as an investment property but only if, okay, di ba yung mga requirement? Number 1, or dalawa lang naman yung matitirang requirement dyan kasi kung yan ay lease, di ba? Number 1, dapat iti-treat mo siya as a as a finance lease at dapat naka-fair value model yan. So, ibig sabihin, kung titignan mo yung choices, hindi naman pwedeng letter A. Kasi kapag hotel yan, PPE na yan. Kapag letter C, wala namang sinabing ganyang number of years. So, letter B lang ang possible na answer. So, letter B sagot natin dyan. 11, if property held under an operating lease is classified as investment property, then kailangan gumamit ka ng fair value model at kailangan naka-finance lease yung treatment natin. So, ang sagot lang dito na possible is letter B. Okay? Kasi nakalagay sa letter A, all property held under operating lease are classified as investment property. Hindi yung pasok lang doon sa qualifications na naka-provide sa standard. Okay? So, letter B ang sagot. Yung letter C, depreciation will no longer be charged. Hindi. Okay? So, wala naman yan doon sa ating requirement. Okay? Next, number 12. Which of the following are examples of investment properties? Okay? So, number 1, land held for long-term capital appreciation. So, pasok yan. Land held for an undetermined future use. The land is regarded as held for capital appreciation. So, pasok pa rin yan. Building owned by the undertaking or held and leased out via one or more operating lease. So, pasok pa rin yan. A building that is vacant but is held to be leased out. So, ipapalis mo rin eventually. So, kasama yan. Property held for sale, hindi. Inventory yan. Property being built on behalf of third parties, hindi. Yan ay construction contract. Owner-occupied property is PPE, hindi rin kasama yan. Property that's being built or for use as investment property, pasok yan. Existing investment property that is being redeveloped for continued use as investment property, pasok pa rin yan. Property that is leased to another undertaking under a finance lease, so hindi ka na mag-recognize niyan kasi hindi na yan investment property kasi lessor ka dyan, so hindi na yan kasama sa items mo. So basically, 1 to 4, 8 and 9. So letter D ang sagot natin dyan. Okay. 13. If a property is partly an investment property and partly owner-occupied, the firm should account for the property separately. Okay? Each portion will be recognized separately, letter C. 14. If a firm provides significant ancillary services to tenants, okay, in its property, then hindi na siya investment property, it is going to be owner-occupied or PPE. So, letter A. 15. A parent company leases a property to its subsidiary. It may be classified as investment property only in the individual FS or in the separate FS. So, ang sagot ay letter C. Okay? Hindi sa subsidiary kasi subsidiary nga yung nag-uupa, di ba? So, yung nagli-lease. So, ibig sabihin, sa point of view ng parent, kapag separate FS, kasama yan. Okay? Pero sa consolidated, hindi na. 16. Repairs and maintenance costs are normally expensed. Okay? So, para lang, basically, ang purpose lang naman nito, just to give us an idea kung ano yung mga usual na ancillary services. So, letter B ang sagot dyan. Expense in the income statement as incurred. 17. If the cost of a major repair, okay, are capitalized, then ano ang gagawin mo? Okay? Letter A, they must be shown as a separate account. Letter B, any remaining cost of a previous inspection must be written off. So parang ang labas dyan, ano ang treatment mo doon sa major repair? Di ba parang ang labas dyan, replacement. So kung replacement method yan, letter B ang gagawin mo. Yung luma, tanggalin mo na doon sa ating records, i-write off mo, tapos i-capitalize mo yung bago. O, di ba parang replacement. Okay? 18, elements of cost of an investment property, purchase price kasama, legal cost kasama, property taxes kasama, overhead of the property department relating to the purchase of asset, hindi naman ito kasama doon sa capitalizable cost na nakalagay doon sa ating standard. So ang sagot ay letter B, 1 to 3 lang. Kasi sinabi, cost, di ba? Pag sinabing cost kasama yung transaction cost. Letter D is not a, or number 4 is not a transaction cost. Okay? 19, the following costs, okay? Startup expense, unless ulit necessary yung startup para ma-prepare yung asset. Operating losses, okay, expense din yan. Abnormal amount of wasted amount of labor and material, expense din yan. Kapag normal, pwede pa. Okay, so letter C ang sagot, expense lahat yan. 20, if payment for an investment property is deferred beyond normal credit terms, any additional payment above cash above cash cost, okay, of the asset will be accounted for as interest or borrowing cost. So letter B ang sagot. 21, the cost of a property interest held under a lease should be valued at, okay, fair value, present value of minimum lease payments, higher of A and B, lower of A and B. So actually ang tinutukoy dito, paano mo daw, kung gagamit ka ng, kung iti-treat mo yung lease as if it is a finance lease, basically ganun din yun. Pero luma kasi yung term na ginamit, present value of minimum lease payments yung ginamit. Ito yung term na ginagamit sa IAS 17. Okay, doon sa bagong standard ng leases, yung sa IFRS, hindi na ito yung ginagamit na term. Pero generally, ang concept pa rin, letter D. Lower pa rin ng dalawang yon kasi generally, yun yung ika-capitalize na cost natin. So letter D ang sagot sa number 21. 22, if one or more assets are exchanged for a new asset, then the new asset will be measured or will be valued at fair value. Okay, so letter B. 23, in the case of an exchange of asset, if the acquired asset cannot be valued, then ang gagamitin mo will be yung cost ng asset given up. Okay, so yun yung gagamitin mo. Kasi 'di ba, hindi pa kasi natin natapos yung discussion ng PPE, pero generally, kung hindi nga available yung ang tawag dito, yung valuation or yung fair value, then ang gagamitin mo yung book value or yung cost. Okay, given up. So letter A. 24, an undertaking can choose either the cost model or fair value model as is accounting policy for investment property, and the choice should be applied to all investment property as a general rule. So letter B yan, with exception to certain items na hindi mo talaga pwedeng magamitan nung nagamit mong model. Okay? And that is particularly talking about the fair value model. Okay? So 25, a gain arising from a change in fair value will be recorded in the income statement. So letter C. Fair value includes, so ano yung mga pwede nating i-consider sa pag-determine ng fair value. So di ba basang tandaan ng fair value lang natin will be yung galing sa market price, yung galing sa similar market with certain adjustment, tapos yung present value of future cash flows. Hindi pwedeng isama ang special financial arrangements at yung mga transaction cost. Kasi fair value ang pinag-uusapan. So sa fair value, hindi kasama itong mga items na given, kaya ang sagot ay letter D. Okay? So yun siya. 27, fair value includes, okay, additional value derived from the creation of a portfolio of properties in different locations. Synergies between investment property and other assets. Legal rights or legal restrictions that are specific only to the current owner. So hindi mo pala pwedeng ipasa. Tax benefits or tax burdens that are specific to the current owner. Hindi mo rin mapapasa. So ang sagot, none of the above din lang yan. So letter D ang sagot ay letter F. Hindi yan pasok sa determination ng fair value. Okay? 28, value in use. Bakit kailangan isama ang value in use? Diba kasi ang concept ng value in use, okay? Actually, hindi pa rin natin natapos yung property, plant, and equipment. Pero ang concept ng value in use, ito yung madederive mo or discounted cash flows that you will derive from the continuing use of the asset. So kung itutuloy mo yung gamit ng asset, pwede mo nang magamit yung A, B, C, and D. Kasi lahat ito ay ma-derive mo or makukuha mo or you will benefit from the continuing use of the asset. So ang sagot ay letter E, all of A to D. 29, fair value accounts for future capital expenditure that will improve the property by not reflecting it. In other words, kapag fair value ang pinag-uusapan, yung ngayon lang. So kung ngayon lang, yung mga mangyayaring future expenditures na hindi pa naman nai-incur or hindi pa naman talaga magte-take effect doon sa current na halaga ng ating asset, then hindi yun pwedeng isama sa pagdetermine ng fair value. So letter C ang sagot natin dyan. 30, kapag sinabi nating cost model, paano yon? Di ba, ang sabi lang natin, cost, bawasan mo ng depreciation at saka impairment. So letter C ang sagot doon. Okay. 31, transfers to or from investment property is made only when there is a change in use. Okay, evidenced by, okay, so ang sagot dito ay any of A to E. Okay, so yan yung, so letter F ang sagot natin. Itong old rule na to, ito kasi yung sinasabi natin kanina, na tanggalin na lang natin yung specifics. Ito yung sinasabi natin kanina na nanggaling siya sa PPE or inventory, tapos magiging part siya ngayon ng ating investment property. Okay, so yun yung mga considerations natin. So basically, ito yung mga kind of transfer. So ang sagot natin ay letter F, A to E. Okay. 32. When an undertaking decides to dispose of an investment property without development, then kung hindi mo i-develop, wala ka rin lang gagawin, di ba? Ang sabi ng standard, ituloy mo na lang na i-recognize siya as investment property at i-recognize mo kapag ibebenta mo na. So letter B yung sagot. 33. If an undertaking begins to redevelop an existing investment property for continued use as investment property, then ganun din, ituloy mo lang na i-recognize as investment property. Wala ka naman palang balak na ilipat. When an undertaking uses the cost model, transfers between investment property, owner-occupied property, and inventories will not change the carrying amount. Diba? Sinabi natin kanina, kung ano yung halaga niya doon sa original classification, yun din lang yung halaga na ililipat mo doon sa next na classification niya without recognizing any changes in the value. So letter A ang sagot. Okay? Kapag naman yung transfer ng investment property carried at fair value papuntang owner-occupied or inventories, di ba ang concept? Basta nanggaling ng fair value or papuntang fair value, kailangan nating i-measure at fair value. So letter B ang sagot natin sa number 35. 36, kung meron daw mga changes in fair value, okay, at yung difference ay mako-compute mo, saan daw i-recognize ang difference? Obviously sa ating income statement. So that's going to be letter A. 37, okay, when an undertaking completes the construction, tanggalin na lang ulit natin to. Okay, when an undertaking completes the construction or development of a self-built investment property that will be carried at fair value, any difference between the fair value of the property at that date and its previous carrying amount will still be recognized in income statement. So yan yung in process pa lang siya, tapos biglang binalak mong ilipat ng classification. So again, recognize in the income statement yung changes. Tapos kapag may compensation from third parties, okay, for items impaired, lost, or sequestrated, kailangan siyang i-recognize kapag the compensation is receivable. So letter B. The carrying amount of an item is recognized, okay, either kapag i-dispose mo na or kapag nag-enter ka ng finance lease, kasi magiging kapalit nga yan yung receivable mo from the finance lease. So letter C ang sagot. 40. Okay, a gain from the sale of an asset should be recognized as gain in the income statement. Again, wala naman tibang pupuntahan yan kapag IAS 40 ang pinag-uusapan. So letter B. And finally, question number 41. The gain or loss arising from the sale of an asset is computed by getting the net proceeds minus the carrying value of the asset. That's going to be letter B. So those are the answers to the theory portion. We are now going to proceed to our problem portion. So problem portion tayo at meron ng mga answers dito. Explain na lang natin kung paano nakuha yung sagot. So question number 1. Rosemary Company and its subsidiaries provide the following properties owned by the group. Anong tinatanong? In the consolidated statement of financial position, of Rosemary Company and its subsidiaries, what total amount should be shown as investment property? Ang hinahanap ay yung sa consolidated. Okay? So, sige. Yung land held by Rosemary for undetermined future use, kasama yan. Yung vacant building used by Rosemary to be leased out under an operating lease, kasama yan. Property held by Rosemary for use in production, hindi yan kasama kasi yan ay PPE. Okay? Yung property held by a subsidiary of Rosemary, a real estate firm, in the ordinary course of business. So basically, inventory yan. Okay? Tapos yung building owned by subsidiary of Rosemary and for which the subsidiary provides security and maintenance services to the lessees. So this is just ancillary services that are insignificant. So still part pa rin to ng property ng investment property. Tapos yung land leased by Rosemary to a subsidiary under an operating lease. Okay? So kapag separate FS ni Rosemary, this is investment property. Pero dahil lang pinag-uusapan ay consolidated, ang umuupa ay si subsidiary, then this is going to be property, plant, and equipment. So hindi na yan kasama. Equipment lease, kahit wag mo nang ituloy yung basa, equipment yun eh. So ang equipment hindi naman kasama as investment property. And finally, building under construction for use as investment property, pasok na yan. So i-add natin lahat yung mga items na yan. That's going to be 1 million plus 2 million. So that's 3 million already. Plus, saan na yun? 2.5. So that's going to be 5,500,000. Tapos, itong 500. Tama ba? Tama ba yung computation ko? Wait lang. Ay, hindi pala kasama to kasi equipment plus 3.5. So 5.5 plus 3.5, that's going to be 9 million. So the answer for this question is already 9 million. Okay? We proceed to question number 2. So question number 2 is, ang tinatanong dito, magkano yung gain or loss to be recognized in the profit or loss. So basahin muna natin. So Analiza Company purchased an investment property on January 1 at a cost of 2,200,000. The property had a useful life of 40 years and at December 31 had fair value of 3 million. On January 1, the property was sold at net proceeds of 2,900,000 and Analiza uses the cost model to account for the investment property. Magkano daw yung gain or loss from the disposal? So basically, ang gagawin natin, kunin muna natin yung carrying value as of December 31, 2009. Basically, this is going to be after 2 years of use at makukuha mo yung 2,035,000. So para makuha natin yun, maglabas na tayong calculator para sure, no? Okay, so lalabas tayong calculator. So kung yan ay 2,200,000, walang binigay na scrap value, di ba? So 2,200,000 divided by ilang years ang useful life nito? Sabi doon 40 years. So 40 years. So 55,000 per year times 2 years kasi December 31, 2000, so 2007. 3 years pala. 2007, 2008, 2009. So times 3 years. So ito na yung ating depreciation. Ibawas natin yan sa 2,200,000. So that's 2,035,000. So 2,035,000 na ang ating carrying value. Binenta natin ng 2,900,000. Okay. So may gain ka na 865,000. So yun yung sagot natin, gain na 865,000. Okay, next we go to question number 3. Nova Company owns 3 properties which are classified as investment property. Detail are provided here. The property was initially acquired in 2005. So yung lahat ng properties na yan with a useful life of 50 years. The entity's accounting policy is to use the fair value model. Okay, the investment properties. What is the gain or loss to be recognized in profit or loss for the year ended December 31, 2010? Fair value model, so ang gagawin lang natin, ipagko-compare lang natin yung value ng 2009 at saka 2010. Kung tumaas yung value, edi gain. Kapag bumaba, edi loss. So ang gawin natin, labas ng calculate, total muna natin yung 2009. Or 2010 na lang kasi yun yung pinaka-recent. So 3,500,000 plus 2,800,000 plus 3,400,000. So ito yung total. Bawas natin yung 3,200,000, yung 3,000,000 tsaka yung 3,900,000. So, lugi ka ng 400,000. So, yun ang sagot natin, 400,000 na loss. Okay. Next, question number 4. Raquel Company has a single investment property which had an original cost of 5,800,000 on January 1. At December 31, the fair value was 6 million. And at December 31, itong 2009, 6 million ang fair value. Noong 2010, the fair value was 5,900,000. On acquisition, the property had useful life of 40 years. What should be the expense recognized in Raquel's profit or loss for the year ended December 31, 2010 under the fair value model and the cost model? Kung fair value model, walang problema. Pagbanggain mo lang yung difference ng fair value na 6 million noong 2009 at saka 5,900,000 noong 2010. So mag-recognize tayo ng 100,000 doon. Kapag naman cost model tayo, edi de-depreciate natin ngayon itong 5,800,000. So that's going to be 5,800,000. Tapos ilang years daw to? 40 years. Walang residual value, di ba? So divide natin ng 40 years. That's 145. So automatic yun na yung expense natin for that particular year. 145,000. Okay? Next, number 5. Jane Company is a lessee. Wrong spelling pa. Okay? Is a lessee. Sige, bayan mo na. Jane Company is a lessee of 2 properties. Okay, below is the detail of the said properties. Okay, so property 1, leased under a finance lease agreement. The property was recognized in the books at 4 million. The property was leased for 2 purposes. 1/4 of the property shall be used as administrative and office space, while the other portion shall be used for rental purposes. Okay? So 1/4 or 1 million will be PPE, tapos yung 3/4 will be investment property. Property number 2, leased under an operating lease agreement. The property is being subleased to other entities. Jane recorded this property as an asset at 2,800,000 and will be applying the cost model for subsequent measurement. So anong concern mo ngayon dyan? Property number 1, walang problema, i-allocate lang natin. So nag-lease tayo, finance lease yon. Yung property ay 4 million, yung 1/4 gagamitin mo as office, so that's going to be PPE, 1 million yon. Yung 3/4 or yung 3 million, gagamitin mo for rental purposes, so that's going to be investment property. So 3 million na yon. Kasunod, itong property 2, hindi natin siya pwedeng i-recognize as investment property kasi operating lease siya, pero cost model daw yung gagamitin mo. Di ba sinabi dapat, anong model dapat? Fair value model yung gagawin mo for this particular kinds of lease agreements. And nag-cost model ka, so hindi pwede. So in that case, hindi siya pwede maging investment property. Ang kasama lang ay yung 3 million dun sa property 1. 3 million na yung sagot sa question number 5. Question number 6. Alcatraz Company owns 2 properties held for rental purposes. Below is a detail of such properties. Ang tinatanong, magkano daw yung i-recognize na investment property ignoring the effects of depreciation. So una, property 1 carried in the books at 5 million. Half is being rented out by subsidiaries while half is rented out by unrelated parties. All lease contracts are classified as operating lease. Okay? Second, a hotel building carried in the books at 7 million. Rooms are rented out as accommodation to guests who pay for room accommodations, complete meals, and other in-house amenities. So, ang problema mo ngayon dyan, first property, anong classification yan? Walang problema. Yan ay investment property in total. Kasi ang tinatanong lang naman, how much is to be recognized as investment property? Hindi naman sinabi kung yan ay consolidated FS. So, sa separate FS ni Alcatraz, yung buong 5 million, that is all held for lease under operating leases. These are investment property. So, 5 million total kasama. Ang problema mo, si property number 2 ngayon, hotel kasi siya. So, kung hotel siya, di ba generally, pag nakita mo na yung word na hotel, alam mo na agad na PPE yan. Pagkatapos, sinabi pa, yung mga ancillary services that are significant, so therefore, it already proves to you na hotel nga talaga yan at PPE talaga yan, ang ancillary services ay significant, so hindi pwedeng investment property. So, ang investment property mo lang sa number 6 is yung 5 million. So, yun yung sagot natin sa number 6. Number 7, punta tayo kay Botswana. Botswana company constructed a building and incurred the following costs. Okay? So, the property will be 20% owner occupied, 60% rented out to outsiders, and the remaining leased out by subsidiaries of Botswana. So basically 20% owner occupied, 60% outside, 20% kay subsidiary. At what amount will the investment property be initially recognized in the books of Botswana? Investment property lang ha. So ang gagawin muna natin, i-total natin lahat ng capitalizable cost. Labas natin yung calculator. Okay. So, materials, labor, and overhead, automatic kasama na yan. So, capitalize natin yung 8 million. Plus, professional and legal fees, kasama yun sa transaction cost. Sama na natin yung 250,000 na yan. Plus, startup cost to test facilities installed in the building. Diba general rule, ang startup cost ay kailangan expense. Pero dito, sa information na pinrovide, kaya ka daw gumastos ng startup cost ay para sa testing. I-test mo daw kung gumagana yung building. So kung kasama yan sa that are necessary in preparing the asset for its intended use, then it will now be capitalizable. So plus 80,000 tayo dito. Okay? Kung walang sinabi kung anong dahilan nung paggastos mo sa startup cost, edi expense mo na outright yun. Next, other wastages, half are expected based on the nature of the construction. So yung half ay normal, yung half ay abnormal. So ang idadagdag lang natin ay yung 50,000 lang. Okay? Tapos initial operating losses, expense na yan. So ang sagot ay ito yung total. Okay? Ito yung total, pero 20% owner occupied, 80% will be investment property. Kahit sabihin mong yung 20% ay sa subsidiaries. So ang gagawin mo ngayon dyan, yung amount na to, multiply natin ng 80%. Ito na yung lalabas na amount ng ating investment property. So letter, wala namang letter. So 6,704,000. Okay. Number 8, Calabarzon Company purchased a building to be classified as investment property for a total consideration of 6 million by paying 1,500,000 down payment and the balance in 3 equal annual installments starting on the date of purchase. The prevailing interest on this type of liability is 12%. Calabarzon incurred 30,000 for broker's fee and 45 for transfers of the legal title. At what amount will the property be initially carried in the books of Calabarzon? So dito yung given, pero lagay natin yung solution kung paano na-compute yan. Okay? So unahin natin yung mga capitalizable costs. Syempre kasama na yung down payment dyan. Okay? So sama mo na yung down payment, walang problema. Down payment na 1,500,000. Automatic capitalizable cost na yan. Next, kunin natin yung present value of payments, installment payments. Okay. So, present value ng installment payments. So, ang gagawin mo ngayon dyan, compute natin. Di ba sinabi, the balance in 3 equal annual installments starting on the date of purchase. So, kung 6 million yun minus 1.5, may 4.5 pa. Kung 3 equal annual installments yun, that's 1.5 per payment. So, ang gagawin natin ngayon, i-multiply natin yung 1.5 doon sa present value factor. Ano ang present value factor na gagamitin natin? Sinabi, yung first installment will be on the date of purchase. So, ibig sabihin, this is present value of an annuity due. Okay? So, ilagay natin yung present value annuity due. So, paano natin i-compute yun? 12%, di ba? So, labas ang calculator. Clear lang muna natin. 12% daw yun. So, 1.12. Okay? Tapos, ilang periods? 3 periods. Pero, yung unang payment ngayon na rin, so basically, minus 1 yung period natin, 2 periods na lang. So, ang gagawin natin ngayon will be divide, tapos enter, hindi pa yan, dalawang period, so 1, 2. Okay, so yan yung kapag, ang tawag dito, kapag lump sum, pero hindi kasi lump sum yan. So, kukunin pa natin. So, i-memory plus ko muna yan. Tapos, 1 minus memory recall. Tapos equal sign. Tapos i-divide ko to ng 0.12. Tapos lalabas to. Dahil annuity due plus 1. So ito yung ating present value factor. So i-hold ko na lang dyan. Tapos i-diretso i-multiply ko na doon sa 1,500,000 na cash flows natin per year. So ito yung capitalizable cost. Kopyahin ko na lang to. For plus 1 na lang ako mamaya dito. So paste ko to. Okay, so 7 ito. Tapos ano pa? Yung broker's fee na magkano? 30,000. Tapos yung transfer fee. Transfer fee na 45,000. So pag ito total natin ngayon yan, that's going to be 1,500,000 plus 4,035,077 plus 30,000 plus 45,000. So ito lahat, 5,610,077. Okay, so yun ang sagot natin dyan. So ulit ito ay 1,500,000 times present value annuity due. Okay? At 12%. Okay, ay 12%. Okay, lagay lang natin para sure. Okay. Next, number 9. On January 1, 20x4 or 2014, Davao Shrimp Company leased a property from Rambao Company under a finance lease agreement. The property shall be treated by Davao as an investment property. At the date of transaction, Rambao provided a contract that Davao shall pay annual rent. Provided a contract that Davao shall pay annual rent of 900,000 for 10 years starting on December 31, 2014. So after one period, Davao paid Rambao 300,000 as a premium to win the bid over the property. The prevailing market rate is 10%. Magkano daw i-recognize yung investment property? So ganun lang ulit. Compute muna natin yung present value of Okay, so present value of cash flows. Okay, so ang gagawin natin, hanapin muna natin yung present value kapag 10% tapos ordinary annuity for 10 years. So ang lalabas natin dyan, clear muna natin lahat, memory clear na rin. So labas natin yung calculator, 10%, so 1.10, tapos divide. Ilang years daw to? 10 years. So medyo mahaba lang ang pindot. So hindi pa to. Ang start natin ito. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So naka 10 periods na tayo. Ito yung kapag lump sum. So ang gagawin natin yung ordinary annuity, di ba? So M plus muna dito. Tapos 1 minus memory recall equal sign ito divided by 0.1. So ito na yung present value factor natin kapag ordinary annuity. I-multiply natin siya doon sa cash flow na 900,000 na annual rent. So multiply natin yan ng 900,000. That's going to be ito. So kopyahin ko na lang to. Okay, pagka-copy natin dyan, ito yung present value ng cash flows natin. Okay, hindi pa tapos kasi sasama pa natin yung natanggap na payment dito, which is yung, wait lang. Magulo kasi. Okay, so dito na lang. Ano nangyari dito? Ba't yung present value ko nagalaw? Sige, yun lang. Using ko lang ha. Okay, present value. Okay, tapos idagdag natin yung premium. Okay, premium paid. Okay, so yung premium paid natin na 300,000. Kasama yan sa capitalizable cost. Kasi transaction cost din lang yan. Okay? Diba? Sabi, ang capitalizable cost ng investment property will be yung cost, yung binayaran mo, okay, plus any transaction cost. So, kasama yung premium na yan. So, pag tinotal natin, that's going to be 5,830,000. So, yun ang sagot natin sa number 9. Okay. Number 10, on March 31, Ecuador company purchased equipment amounting to 500,000 and building amounting to 3,500,000, both intended for rental purposes. Okay? At the end of the year, the equipment has a fair value of 460,000 while the building is estimated to have a market value of 3,700,000. Estimated transaction cost to sell the equipment and the building, okay, at year end is 50,000 and 130,000 respectively. At what amount will the investment property be carried at year-end assuming the fair value model is used. Okay? So, syempre, ang una mong gagawin, wag mo nang i-consider si equipment kasi yung equipment hindi naman pwedeng maging investment property yan. So, ang kasama lang na investment property natin is yung building. Okay? So, ito daw yung amount ng building. Okay? Nung year-end na, ang fair value na nung ating equipment ay 460 pero ignore mo yan kasi hindi nga kasama sa investment property yan. 3,700,000 na daw yung ating building. So, ano ngayon ang gagawin natin dyan? I-compare mo na lang. So, anong fair value ngayon? 3,700,000. Yun yung i-recognize natin na value ng investment property at year-end. Okay? So, yun lang. Simple lang yun. 11. Florida Incorporated as an investment property that is carried at its fair value on October 31 for 850,000. On the same date, the entity decided to reclassify such as PPE. So, yung investment property na ka-measure at fair value, ginawa mo daw PPE. Florida's PPE are all measured at cost model pero walang problema yan. Basta ang sinabi, di ba? Kung naka-measure ka at fair value, before mong i-reclassify, kailangan i-measure mo muna siya at fair value. Okay? So, in this case, if the investment property was treated as a PPE from the date it was acquired and measured using the cost model, it would have a carrying amount of 800,000. Irrelevant yan sa ating discussion. Okay? Ang hinahanap lang natin is kung magkano yung fair value at the time of transfer. So, nag-transfer tayo at ang fair value niya ay 850. Yun na. 850 na yung sagot natin sa number 11. Okay? Number 12, Gotham City Company has investment property carried at 400,000 and has fair value of 450. On the same date, Gotham decided to classify it as inventory. So ano to? Fair value ulit, no? Okay? Pero hindi, sorry. Ito yung carrying amount tas fair value 450. Anong ginamit natin nung siya ay investment property pa? The investment property are measured using cost model. So naka-cost model pala siya, 'di ba? So sinabi natin kapag cost to cost or cost model ang ginamit mo, pag ililipat mo kung ano na rin yung carrying amount, yun na rin siya. So at that time, ito yung carrying amount niya. So ito na rin yung gagamitin mong amount that will be carried kapag meron na tayong reclassification ng inventory. So ang sagot ngayon dyan ay 400,000. Okay, so the answer for number 12 is 400,000. Okay, so second part of problem portions. Problem portion natin. So let's have the question number 1, which is classification of items as investment property, similar to what we had in the part 1. So the question here is for us to determine how much is the total investment property. So first item ulit, it says there, land held for long-term capital appreciation, that's already going to be included. Land held for a currently undetermined future use, kasama. Land held for as future plant site, this is already PPE. Land held for sale in the ordinary course of business, that's going to be inventory. Building rented out under finance lease, this is not going to be part of our investment property kasi nga finance lease yun, ni-lease out natin. So meaning, na-transfer na natin sa lessee yung significant risk and rewards of the asset. So hindi nakasama yan. Tapos building rented out under operating lease. So kasama pa yan. Equipment hindi na. So i-total lang natin yung 800, 2,800,000, yung 3,200,000 dito, at saka yung yun lang. Okay, so basically that's a total of 6,800,000. Okay, so basically, check lang natin, double check natin 800 plus 28 plus 32, yan, 68. Okay, so tama lang. Next, we go to question number 2. Ang question is how much is the total investment property? So let us check again. Okay, so vacant building to be leased out under operating lease, pasok yan. Building being constructed to adjust incorporated, tayo si modulate. So this is construction contract, hindi kasama. Building under construction to be used as office, PPE. Building under construction to be rented out under operating lease, investment property. Building rented out to modularized employees who pay rent at market rate. So ibig sabihin, kahit related party yan, kung sinisingil natin ng renta, so that's still investment property. So pasok pa rin yan. Tapos, building awaiting disposal This is office building, so that's property, plant, and equipment. So hindi kasama yan. So i-total natin. So that's going to be ano yung first 4 million tapos 400,000. Yun lang, no? Ay, wait lang. Anong nangyari doon? Vacant building to be leased out under operating lease. So kasama yun. Wait, sorry. So building rented out to modulus employees who pay rent at market rates. So I think this is not going to be investment property. This is going to be PPE pa rin. Okay? PPE. Kasi related parties yung doon ta separate FS pa yun. Related party na sila in the separate FS. So that's going to be property, plant, and equipment pa rin. So generally, your investment property there will be 4 million plus 400,000 only. So letter B. Okay. Number 3, the company has a 10-story condominium building with carrying amount of 16 million. The first 4 floors are being rented out to tenants under operating lease and the rest are used as office space. Each portion of the building can be sold separately and leased out separately under finance lease. Assume that the fair values of the condominium are approximately equal. Okay, how much is classified as investment property? So basically, kunin lang natin yung total value. The total value of the property is 16 million. And then divide it by 10 floors. Multiplied it by 4 floors that are rented out. So 6,400,000 will be allocated as the cost of the investment property. So letter C. Number 4, Interseed Midget Company owns a 100,000 square meter mall. The rentable space is 80,000 square meters. Okay. However, a 10 square meter space is occupied as an administration office. The carrying amount of the building is 40 million. How much is classified as the investment property? So this is the case provided by the standard where there is only a insignificant portion that is used as office space, and basically the entire property should be classified as an investment property. So in this case, number 4, the total cost or the total value of the building will be classified as investment property. So that's letter A. No need to allocate kasi the space that is used as PPE is insignificant compared to the total value of the total rentable space or the total area of that particular investment property. Okay. Number 5, languish to become weak. Company owns a building being rented out to various tenants under operating lease. Languish company provides security and maintenance services. The building has a carrying amount of 4 million. Leasing is not the primary business of languish. So how much would be classified as investment property? The entire property is going to be investment property. So 4 million na yan. Number 6, the company now owns a building that is operated as a hotel. So again, when we talk about items that are classified as hotel, automatic this is already PPE. So how much will be classified as investment property? The answer is 0. Okay, because hotels are operated under PPE classification. Next, token company owns 90% interest in Symbol Incorporated during the year. So ibig sabihin, token is the parent. Okay, 90%. So token has control over Symbol. During the year, token rented out a building to Symbol. So basically, this is a normal rental. However, it is rented out to a related party. As of year-end, the building has carrying amount of 4 million. In the consolidated FS, how much will be recorded as investment property? The answer is 0. If you're talking about the separate FS, the 4 million property will be classified as investment property. Separate FS. But for consolidated, it will be treated as PPE, so the answer is 0. Number 8, Limbo Oblivious Company has the following transactions during the year. So the question there is how much is the total cost of the investment property on initial recognition. So let's start first with this one. Purchased building to be held as investment property for 4 million. Direct cost incurred amounted to 80. Cost of day-to-day servicing of the asset total 20. So for purchase of investment property, it will be recorded at cost, which is going to include transaction cost. So for this particular problem, that's going to be 4 million plus 80. Or this is going to be 4,080,000. So I'll just put the total here, 4,080,000. Okay. Next, construction or constructed building to be used as investment property. Total cost incurred include the following. Materials, 8 million included. Startup cost, no. Operating, no. Abnormal, no. So basically, we are going to include only 8 million here. Okay, startup cost was not, or there is no detail as to what is the purpose of the startup cost. So that's going to be expense outright. Next, land acquired with currently undetermined future use by issuing note payable with face amount of 4 million, present value of 3,200,000. So in this case, we're going to value that at 3,200,000. Present value, of course. The remaining amount will be interest, or it will be amortized. Next, building capitalized under a long-term lease as allowed under PFRSS to be rented out under various operating leases. The present value of lease payments is 2 million. Okay, so we are going to capitalize this. Building capitals under long-term lease, so meaning this is finance lease that we acquired. Okay, and then we are going to recognize this as 2 million. That is the present value of the lease payments. Next, land to be used as investment property was acquired through exchange. The fair value of asset given up in the exchange is 12 million. The fair value of the land received is 14,400. Additional cash paid for the land received is 2 million. The exchange has commercial substance. So if there is commercial substance, we need to consider if there is, first of all, fair value of asset given up. So the fair value of asset given up is 12 million. So that is given. And if you are going to use the fair value of the asset given up, then we are going to add any cash paid and deduct any cash received. So in this case, you paid cash amounting to 2 million. So meaning we are going to capitalize a total of 14 million here. So let us add all of the items. Calculator. Okay, so we'll have 4,080,000 plus 8 million plus 3,200,000 plus 2 million plus 14 million. So that's 31,280. Okay, so that's going to be letter D, 31,280,000. Okay. Number 9. On January 1, 2021, Nurture Your Company acquired a building with an estimated useful life of 10 years and residual value of 400,000 for a total cost of 4 million. The fair value of the building on January 1, 2021 is sold currently on the fair value of the building on January 1, 2021 is 4,800,000 while the fair value is 5,200,000. So the company estimated that if the building is sold, the cost to sell will be 200,000. But of course, that will be ignored if we are going to use the fair value model. So it says in the problem that you're using the fair value model. So basically, we are just going to get the difference between the fair value on December 31 and the initial cost of 4 million. There's a difference of 1,200,000 which will be recognized as an unrealized gain. So that's going to be letter D. Okay. Question number 10 and 11. So the company has an investment property with carrying amount of 4,400,000 and fair value of 5,200,000 on January 1, 2021. Question number 10, if the company decides to change its accounting policy from cost model to fair value model, how much is the gain or loss on the change? Okay? So it's going to be from cost model to fair value model. So meaning let's try to compute first for the difference. Okay, so basically the difference will be 800,000. So the 800,000 will be recognized now in profit or loss. So the answer for number 10 is letter A. Okay, that's basically the difference between 5,200,000 and 4,400,000. Okay. Next, if the company decides to change its accounting policy from the fair value model to the cost model, how much is the gain or loss on the change, and what is the entry to affect the change. So there is a change from fair value model going to cost model. Okay? So basically, if you came from fair value model, what you simply need to do is to carry over the fair value as the initial cost of the asset. So meaning there will be no adjustment. So the answer there for number 11 is letter D, 0. Okay? Because the item there is basically you retain the value of the investment property, but you're going to put a memorandum entry recognizing or stating that you are going to change the method from fair value to cost model. So from this point forward, meaning you are going to depreciate already the 5,200,000. So that's the answer for number 11. 12. So these are now going to talk about transfers. Okay? So first, number 12. On January 1, 20X1, the company decided to lease out under operating lease one of its buildings that was previously used as office space. The building has an original cost of 12 billion and carrying amount of 4 million and fair value of 4,800,000 as of January 1, 20X1. The company uses the cost model for both PPE and investment property. Okay, so that's the key term or that's the key phrase that we are going to consider. The building has a remaining useful life of 10 years as of January 1, 20X1. Jaded company uses the straight-line method of depreciation. How much is the gain or loss on the reclassification of investment property? So this came from cost model and it will be transferred to cost model. So if that's cost to cost, then we are simply going to carry the carrying amount from the original classification and transfer it to the new classification without considering any gain or loss. So the answer for number 12 is 0. Okay? Next, number 13. This is now a transfer from investment property to PPE. Okay? So on December 31, 20X1, Spellblind Facility Company decided to use as office space one of its building that was previously leased out. So from investment property to PPE. The building has an original cost of 12 million and an accumulated depreciation of 8 million. The recoverable value of the building is 3,200,000 as of December 31, 20X1. Okay? And then the company uses cost model for both the PP and the investment property. What will be the entry on December 31? Okay? So the concern there is we are now going to use the cost model, but prior to the reclassification, we need to continue to use the cost model, which includes recognition of depreciation and impairment loss. So in this case, if we are going to consider that the cost is 12 million, the accumulated depreciation is 8 million, which gives us 4 million as the carrying value. But as of the date of reclassification, the recoverable value is only 3,200,000, which means that the asset is impaired and the amount of impairment is 800,000. So prior to reclassifying, we need to recognize first impairment loss of 800,000. So the answer is letter D. Debit to impairment loss of 800,000. So that's going to be letter D for number 13. Number 14. On December 31, the company decided to lease out under operating lease one of its buildings that was originally office space. So that's PPE going to investment property. The building has an original cost of 12 million and accumulated depreciation of 8 million. Annual depreciation is 400,000. The company uses fair value model for investment property. Okay? The fair value of the building on December 31 is 6 million. Okay? And the entry to record the transfer of the building to investment property includes. So in this point, okay, or at this particular case, what was the model used? Okay? So cost model, but it is actually going to be transferred to investment property. So in this case, we are going to revalue first the property prior to it being reclassified as investment property. So with this, if that's 12 million, okay, minus 8 million, that's for January 1. So let's put the computation. So that's 12 million minus 8 million. So that's 4 million as of January 1. It was reclassified on December 31, meaning we need to recognize first depreciation of 400,000. So this will be minus 400,000. giving us 3,600,000 as the carrying amount. On the date of reclassification, the fair value is now 6 million, meaning there is a difference of 2,400,000, which is going to be recognized as revaluation surplus prior to reclassifying it as investment property. So the answer here now is letter D. Okay, so that's going to be revaluation surplus of 2,400,000. Okay. 15. Transfer now from from investment property to PPE, still using the fair value model. So the property was previously leased out and now going to be made or used as office space. The building has fair value of 4 million and 4,800,000 on January 1, 20X1 and December 31, 20X1. Okay, if the fair value model is used, then simply measure it at fair value prior to reclassification. So meaning if these are the fair values, okay, between January and December, there is a difference of 800,000. Recognize the 800,000 as unrealized gain. So that's going to be letter D. Okay, and then the 4,800,000 will now be reclassified as PPE. Okay. Next, 16 and 17. Okay. So let's use this for the next two problems. So on December 31, the company decided to reclassify a building previously used as owner-occupied to investment property. Okay, and these are the items relating to that particular item. So let's just fix the items here. Okay, so historical cost is 12 million. Accumulated depreciation is 8 million, giving us the carrying amount of 4 million. If no impairment has been recognized previously, then this is going to be 4,800,000 and the fair value is 6,400,000. Okay. So question number 16, by the way, in the problem also stated that the fair value model was used for investment property. Okay? So question number 16, how much is recognized in profit or loss on December 31, 20X1 relating to the transfer? Okay? So if we are going to compute this, okay, so that's going to be, if the carrying amount is 4 million and the carrying amount, if no impairment has been recognized, is 4.8 and the new fair value is 6,400,000, this means that we can recover now the previous impairment that is amounting to 800,000 relating to the impairment of, or the previous impairment of the property, plant, and equipment. So meaning, we are going to recognize impairment reversal amounting to 800,000. So that's going to be letter C. That will be recognized in profit or loss. Okay? Next, since we are going to transfer it to investment property, okay, and assuming that there is going to be revaluation, then we are now going to compare 4,800,000 and 6,400,000. The difference will be recognized as revaluation surplus. So that's going to be 6,400,000 minus 4,800,000. That's 1,600,000 to be recognized as revaluation surplus in other comprehensive income. So that's number 17 will be letter B. Okay? So yun yung answer natin sa number 17. Okay. So basically, to explain further, the 800 will be the recovery of the impairment loss. Since impairment is recognized in P&L, the reversal will also be recognized in P&L up to the extent of the extent of the impairment loss recognized. Any difference between the original carrying value, if no impairment happened, and the fair value, okay, will now be recognized as revaluation surplus. So that's the answer for number 17 or 16 and 17 will be C and B. Okay? Last question. This is going to be number 18. Okay. So on December 31, the company decided to reclassify a building previously used as owner-occupied property to investment property. Okay. By the way, before we move on, you might be asking, why is it that we need to compute for revaluation surplus? The reason is because the investment property will be measured at fair value. So if we're going to measure it at fair value, then this is going to be relevant in the computation because this will now be the initial carrying amount of our investment property. So in that case, before we can arrive at this amount, we need to recognize the difference in the value of the PPE. Since PPE is the original classification, it will be recognized as revaluation surplus before it is going to be reclassified. Okay? For question number 18, okay, information will be 12 million cost, 8 million accumulated depreciation, so carrying amount is 4 million. There is a revaluation surplus of 800,000 and the new fair value as of December 31 is 2,800,000. So, question, if the company uses the fair value model for investment property, what will happen? Okay? So, of course, let us first consider that between 4 million, which is the carrying amount, and 2,800,000, which is the new fair value, which is the basis of the capitalizable cost when we transfer it to investment property, there is a 1,200,000 difference, which is supposed to be a loss. However, there is an amount of 800,000 of revaluation surplus that can be used to cover up the loss. So 1,200,000 minus 800, that's 400,000. So meaning, out of the total 1,200,000 loss, 800 will be covered by revaluation. So we are going to eliminate the revaluation and the remaining 400,000 will be recognized as a loss. So that's why the answer for number 18 is going to be letter A loss of 400,000, the amount that cannot be covered by the revaluation surplus. Okay, so that is going to be our answer for the part 2 of our investment property. Okay, so that's the end of our lecture.